The world of cyberpunk is home to corruption, corporate reign, and, of course, conspiracies. The proclaimed epicenter of it all being Night City, hosting a population of nearly 5 million people as of the 2020s, but named home by very few. After the death of its founder, Richard Knight, in the late 1990s, the city would never see a peaceful day. Organized crime, corporate greed, and more contributed to the urban violence, street crime, and wars that have become commonplace. The only ones to ever benefit being the ones at the top, those who never have to step a foot outside their luxurious penthouses. But there was a region that was secluded more than others from this harsh lifestyle. Not pure of it, but certainly far more regulated. This was the Pacifica region. Yes, the Pacifica region. The newfound home of the Haitian community, led by a gang of netrunners called the Voodoo Boys in 2077. A region that remains isolated, with its own rules, language, manufactured goods, and independent net. Even boasting its very own combat zone and sub-district, Dogtown. But it wasn't always like this. It was once envisioned as Night City's vacation resort for the ultra-wealthy, and for the most part, functioned as intended even up to the year of 2045. But it's not what was above the surface that's of interest. Something was lurking far beneath, hidden from the public view and corporate rivals. A secret that would only remain a rumor amongst citizens, successfully buried until those with an interest in digging up dead secrets began poking around. The boogeyman underneath the cozy Pacifica district was the Cynosure facility, a series of abandoned underground research sites that belonged to the Militech Armaments Corporation. Its discovery in the Phantom Liberty expansion has revealed a lot of informative lore, but also added fuel to the speculation and unraveling of conspiracies. This video will contain spoilers for Phantom Liberty and the novel No Coincidences. So if you haven't completed Phantom Liberty or plan on reading No Coincidences, I heavily recommend just saving this video and returning. Without further delay, let's dive into the story of Militech's most ominous and controversial research, Project Cynosure. This begins at the origin point of all legends and the visionary of the 21st century, Richard Knight. In the 1990s, he had planned an ideal new city, an environment that would be controlled and ultimately be safe from the ravages tearing the world apart. His new city was to be completely plant, self-sufficient, and capable of holding off even the most determined criminals. This would, of course, take an unheard of amount of capital to finance such a large-scale project. Something that had never been done before, and really had nothing to model itself after. It was in this step that Knight set the foundation for what the city would become. With the collapse, many corporations had been looking to establish their own urban areas, a place where governments would be corporate run, allowing optimum zoning and no anti-business elements to interfere with corporate growth. Ideally, it would be a capitalist mecca of opportunity. With the capital needed, Knight began to draw up the plans for its infrastructure in many regions, each of which would have a different architectural style, theme, and purpose. One such area was the Pacifica Playground region that would be located south of the city, envisioned as Night City's vacation resort for the ultra-wealthy. It was to be a true paradise, catering to corporate employees and tourists alike, littered with golden sandy beaches, luxurious hotels, and unmatched entertainment, all of it being protected by Militech security contractors. When the time came to construct the city, there was a void that needed to be filled. Despite having major corporations and bankrollers backing this project, none were construction companies. So to bring in the machinery and workforce to actually dig the holes and put up the steel, Knight had turned toward the West Coast mobs. By investing a large amount of money into the partnership, the organized crime mobs hoped that they would not only make a huge return on lucrative construction work, but also have the inside track on future gambling, prostitution, and drug franchises in the new city. Knight's insistence that his new city would be safe and crime-free would lead to daily threats against Knight's life. Eventually, his luck had run out. On September 20th, 1998, he was shot and murdered in his penthouse suite at the top of a newly constructed Parkview Tower. Richard Knight's killer was never apprehended. A downward spiral ensued as corporations and organized crimes carved up the city's resources. From 2005 to 2009, the mob would be the dominating force around Del Coronado Bay, as corporations had little to no interest in running Night City. Despite the poor conditions Night City had always had, these years were easily amongst the worst, with more murders in that 4-year span than there were in most cities in 10. It was ruled with an iron fist and had become hell on earth. After sidelining during 4 years of street warfare, the corporations around the city finally began to take matters into their own hands. Beginning a 2-year conflict known as the Mob War, the corporations battled the underworld for control over Night City. It wasn't necessarily for the average citizen though. The mob was just bad for business. At the end of the war, the corporations placed a puppet mayor in power and started cleaning up the rest of Night City. The newly elected city council, faced with the return of chaos in the city, deputized corporate security forces and allowed them full authority within city limits. Soon after, the corporate and city centers were cleaned out and restored to their pristine states. The same was done to other neighborhoods to varying degrees. And now, with the city under complete corporate control, corporations only had each other to rival with. The Pacifica region during this time had managed to avoid being decimated. All things considered, it was one of the most attractive locations in Night City, but Militech had launched plans unknown to anyone else. Taking advantage of their security contract with the city and the planning of Pacifica, Militech had constructed a series of underground sites known as the Cynosure Facility. During this time, which was the height of the pre-data crash net, Militech and Arasaka were locked in a hostile and at times lethal rivalry for technological dominance. In 2013, Arasaka had managed to get an extremely threatening lead. They had succeeded in capturing Alt Cunningham and probing her for the source to the Soulkiller program, managing to make away with a version of it even after Johnny Silverhand raided the Arasaka HQ. The release of Soulkiller, Arasaka's flagship digital weapon and virus, spurred Militech to attempt to create something similar in impact, but with a different set of specifications in mind. This would be spearheaded by Project Cynosure, facilitated within Cynosure Site C, and would become a great undertaking in AI research. The goal wasn't to ultimately create their own AI from the ground up, but use neural adaptive technologies to capture presumed rogue AIs, and to harness their capabilities for Militech's own goals. Keep in mind that this was before the data crash and Black Wall, so they weren't just diving past a netwatch barrier and nabbing up whatever they spotted first. If Soulkiller had worked to kill and capture the engrams of netrunners brave or foolish enough to take on Arasaka, Militech Cynosure would be doing something similar. To capture rogue AI, utilizing these networks and utilize their adaptive capabilities to wreak havoc on both the real world and cyberspace, a cyberspace equivalent of a nuke. Militech, while having the obvious armed personnel, netrunners, researchers, etc., also employed the use of the Militech Cerberus to help around the facilities for research and technology. This hexapod machine was huge, one of the most advanced robots at the time, in large thanks to its unbreakable armor and subsystems for AI models, though these were kept as secretive as possible and exclusively for Militech use. Ironically, these devices would be extremely helpful in disconnecting the old net in unreachable locations, though pose a risk when overwritten with a rogue AI. Then, alongside the direct research on rogue AI and the net, Militech would draft up blueprints for weapons utilizing the rogue AI, the result of a request from the Military Ops Division, who were interested in the results of the research and wanted production to begin as quickly as possible. So in a new department with elevated clearance, the development of weaponry began, two of which being a cyberdeck by the name Canto Mark VI and an SMG by the name Erebus. This research went so far as to acquire rival scientists for their project. In the Cynosure facility, we can find a shard titled "I May As Well Have Been Kidnapped," detailing a turncoat from Arasaka's labs, one that possibly even had a vague understanding of the Soulkiller project. In a world dominated by corporations who get away with murder with less than a slap on the wrist in the best case scenario, defecting can be extremely dangerous. This scientist hadn't expected the harsh treatment and lifestyle. Something that had once been made out to be the best decision of their life turned into a secluded life of constant inspections and surveillance, stuck in place, analyzing algorithms day in and day out. Well, not that there was a difference between day and night down there. While this scientist would look out at the Netrunners with envy, it's arguable they were succumbed to a fate far worse. While their initial experiments painted them as celebrities, the soul of the project, there's only so much good that could come from poking around rogue AI you don't understand, ones with home advantage. While the logs we discover in Cynosure are disjointed, being out of order, split between sites, and from different time periods, some organizing leads us to a greater story. During the course of the project, all participating Netrunners had begun to display signs of psychological fatigue, with increasing tendency toward melancholy, introvertedness, memory loss, and depressive thoughts bordering on the suicidal, symptoms undoubtedly connected to the conducted experiments. To make matters worse, despite requests to pause testing or increase the gap between runs for the well-being and safety of the Netrunners, higher-ups at Militech refused to delay the project. It would only be in the event of necessity that Netrunners would even be replaced. Instead, it was suggested to make use of substances to ensure their readiness. These Netrunners were being drugged to increase their output. The Netrunners worked under extremely dangerous circumstances and with unreasonable goals, being forced to handle upward of 3 rogue AI at once, with a high probability of fatality from simply transporting these AI. When a snared AI was capable of freeing itself from the Netrunner moments before disconnecting, it was capable of attacking by transferring a sudden volume of data into the Netrunner, thereby frying their synapses and resulting in the Netrunner foaming at the mouth and bleeding from their eyes, a painful death at the hands of corporate incompetence and greed to control the rogue AI sooner than later. Militech had actually personally fashioned neural network stabilizers to offset encounters with rogue AI in exchange for slightly lower performance in the net, but it seemed as though during the course of one run, it had been disabled, resulting in the death of that Netrunner. This was presumed to be a failure to follow procedure, but another incident had followed. While it remains largely spoken about without details, we can piece some assumptions together. In the Shard, Urgent, regarding the recent incident, the internal memo sent to Clearance Level 3 employees covered some words being spread about the incident previously mentioned. At the time, it was inferred that the security systems were breached and interfered with by an alien intelligence. As of yet, there was no idea if and to what degree this intelligence had infiltrated the facility's infrastructure. So, as a precaution, they had requested armed forces for temporary assistance, quoting, "at least something to deal with Cerberus." In an earlier entry, it had been stated that techies who previously controlled these bots were now replaced with Netrunners. Netrunners not nearly as capable of operating and maintaining the Cerberus. So, the likely story behind this incident is that one of the mini Cerberus units had quote-unquote malfunctioned and killed an employee. The head of the department had no access to external analysis, believing that the facility was not being properly monitored for incoming and outgoing data by Militech. There was a fear that a Netrunner, like Raish Bartmoss or someone of equal caliber, had already discovered the project and was tampering with equipment to cause these malfunctions, and that, soon enough, the consequences of their highly controversial research would follow. But the likely, unspoken truth is much more terrifying. While it certainly isn't confirmed, the possibility of a rogue AI slipping into the network is much more plausible due to their close proximity to its gateways in the event they evade a Militech Netrunner at the last second. The entirety of this project reeked. The fact of the matter is, Militech never cared for the safety of its Netrunners or personnel, if the drugging and high fatality rate didn't make it abundantly clear. But something was worrying Militech, so much so that they went on to close down the project. Here's the official statement. Dearest colleagues, it is with great regret that I must announce the termination of the Cynosure project. We know how important this undertaking has been for yourselves and your careers and offer our deepest sympathies. We would like to ensure you that the supervisory board came to this decision on the basis of meticulous reports and analyses, motivated as we have always been by the well-being of our employees. Cynosure was an enormously ambitious and pioneering project to such an extent that the results you have produced will not only steer the course of this department, but the entire corporation. Cynosure widened and deepened our knowledge of AI and plumbed the farthest reaches of the net. It has also been proven that in the cyberspatial realm, it is man who wields power over artificial intelligence, not the other way around. This discovery has greatly reassured us all. Information regarding further reassignment as well as special bonuses for former Cynosure employees will be communicated to you by your HR representatives. Thank you all for the hard work you poured into Cynosure and in your future endeavors here at Militech." End quote. Now, there is a multitude of reasons for the project shutting down. It could have been the reliance on African mineral deposits now controlled by the Arasaka Corporation, slower progress than anticipated, covering up their tracks to avoid a diplomatic crisis, the dawn of the Fourth Corporate War, or even discovering that their network had been breached by rogue AI. The possible reasons are numerous, but there is one event with the largest impact on net infrastructure, one that tends to be named as its major setback: the data crash. This event released the Rabbids virus created by Barmos upon his death, which went on to wipe out much of the old net's infrastructure and unleashed many of the rogue AIs Militech hoped to capture into the fragments of cyberspace. During the following years, Militech would have its hands full with the Fourth Corporate War reaching its peak, eventually managing to end it and even kick Arasaka out of the United States for the time being. This era, from August 2023 to the late 2040s, would be known as the Time of Red. By 2045, the Pacifica Resort functioned as intended once again. The Playland by the Sea amusement park continued to flourish, and the district, now largely sponsored by corporations and under massive redevelopment, attracted crowds from San Francisco and other parts of California. In the 2050s, investors funded the Pacifica District further to become a wealthy touristic destination, with yet again, Militech as its major investor. Separate from the main city, this eastern Pacifica would be called Serenisons. In the following years, Pacifica's old buildings were demolished to give space to new ones. During this process, in 2058, a large explosion under a construction site halted the progress in the surrounding area. Investigations were issued, but it was never determined the cause, at least not publicly. The cause had been Militech's extensive network of underground infrastructure, an uncovering of the Cynosure project. Due to this and rumors spreading once again about the project, the Night City Council decided to wall off Serenisons, giving the excuse of a gas leak. And with this time, Militech constructed a large wall around the district. Construction was resumed, and for a time, the new measures were enough to bring investors back. In the mid to late 2060s, Militech began working on a possible reactivation of the program. This was likely a result of what I personally call the Black Wall arms race, a period of time following the construction of the Black Wall in which corps, governments, and even gangs alike all wished to probe the Black Wall and its rogue AI to get a technological advantage above all others. While this breached international law and corporate treaties, not to mention the ethical concerns of rogue AI flooding the net, various affiliations continued to probe the outer reaches of the Black Wall. This specific project was headed by Militech research specialist Evan McRae and his co-workers, those named being Lisa Smith, Cesar Mejiras, and the twins Aurora and Amerique, who were all sent as a team to access both Cynosure Sites C and D. Though the actual researchers were not happy that the twins were tagged onto this project. Not only were they from Europe and got a cushy office instead of slumming down with the rest of the team, but they were whacked in the head, especially the brother who just stares like he's planning to murder you. Upon arrival on September 22, 2068, the team sent probes throughout the facility to take readings from the core. Preliminary scans showed that the facility remained inactive and was safe to conduct research and to attempt to uncover any abandoned data. Despite the facility seemingly being untouched since its abandonment, Dr. Evan McRae expressed having an uncanny feeling that something was waiting for them, a presence embedded in its infrastructure, even though scans hadn't detected any signs of life. His hypothesis being if experiments on rogue AIs were conducted there, then maybe, just maybe, their remnants were still there. Inactive, dormant, waiting. But that was just a feeling. McRae went on to create a video log on day 3, and this is what he had to say.
Yeah. Okay, it's recording. Senior Research Specialist Evan McRae, this is day 3 of our expedition. We've moved some equipment to the bunker. The old rail system remains largely functional. They might have used it to transport heat exchangers from the lab once upon a time. There is a mountain of old research here. I'll see if we can find a use for any of it.
After settling into the facility and confirming their safety, the team established a connection to the old net. Using its very own protocols and algorithms would even enable them to move around cyberspace while avoiding unwanted attention and security measures. Doing this might even allow them to approach the border of the Black Wall undetected and carefully reach beyond it, though of course this had to be done with precision, as to avoid raising the suspicion of Netwatch. McRae's second log came on day 39 and had this to say.
Well, Caesar managed to breach one of the data forts. He found fragments of some outdated code. Command controls for a weapon, perhaps? All we need now is an AI to merge its findings. Lisa will probe the Black Wall for any potential gateways. Huh? Oh, right. Day 39. Thanks, Lisa.
The Netrunner tasked with entering the old net and establishing a connection with the Black Wall was Lisa Smith. With the aid of the team, she had successfully established contact with the Black Wall using the bunker's infrastructure. Though upon contact, the Black Wall penetrated the security systems and used Lisa's neuro interface to try taking control of the core. The team managed to act quickly, deactivating entire sections of the bunker to prevent the Black Wall from accessing the mainframe, getting the situation under control and recovering Lisa to place under specialist care. Despite the risk, Dr. McRae urged that the project proceeds, believing this perceived attack was in fact an attempt at establishing communication, wanting to conduct a series of additional, controlled approaches to the Black Wall. It was during this period that Lisa Smith began sending out one-way messages to a doctor of hers named Kathleen McCormack. She recalled after a deep dive into cyberspace, she was whisked away for the usual testing. At one point, it had transitioned to neurological tests that ask you nonsensical questions that apparently reveal something about yourself. Things like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? What do you associate with the smell of freshly roasted coffee? Etc. But it was at that question she hesitated, because she suddenly realized she didn't know. She knew what coffee was, but that's it. The feeling only went on to pass when she had made herself a cup of strong black coffee, but remained a little weirded out. Certainly, it couldn't have been a side effect of her last few dives, right? She had done them for years. But one fact Lisa didn't take into consideration was the nature of said dives. In her second message to Kathleen, she states while being locked in the facility, it all started with a ringing in her ear, like a really faint whine. But within the whine, she started to hear something. It was words. She immediately attributed it to auditory hallucinations. But at night, when she'd try to fall asleep, she'd get the feeling like something was trying to understand her, though she had no idea what. She heard it in the monitors, in the cables, the walls, whispers in the dark. Nothing made sense. Did she need new meds, fresh air, or had she finally just gone crazy? The twins began suggesting to the Militech board that they should start wrapping things up. Was it perhaps out of fear for what could be uncovered, or did they know what it was and were secretly working for another group unbeknownst to Militech and the team? Well, the exact reasoning would remain unknown, and by the 55th day of the expedition, Militech suddenly shut down the research. Dr. Evan McRae was appalled by this decision and tried his best to urge for the project's continuation, but Militech held firm. The decision had been made and the team needed to evacuate, stating, "You're not just poking the bear anymore. If we don't bury this underground immediately, we could trigger a crisis that not even your worst nightmares could conjure up." End quote. This is by all means a terrifying statement to hear from a megacorp. It makes you wonder just what made Militech back out again. Was it simply reevaluating the risk? Or had Arasaka or Netwatch caught wind of the project's revival? It's hard to tell if we will ever know, but at the time, the Unification War and the possible conflict between Arasaka and Netwatch made Militech's goal of reactivating Cynosure extremely difficult, if not outright impossible, especially as the Unification War inched toward the Pacifica district of Night City. Though it didn't stop them from experimenting with other AI projects separate from Cynosure down the line, such as merging a human and AI in the No Coincidences novel. Here is McRae's final video log.
Day 50, 50. We received orders from HQ to shut down and return home. They say we're not safe here anymore. Caesar's packed us. We await Lisa's return. The poor thing's been in the bunker for 2 days. Jacked in. Or is it 3? She just won't come out. She's trying to download the data from the fortresses, but we can't hope to take it with us if she does. Now that's it. I'm gonna get her, Caesar.
Shit! This is bigger than I thought. Militech using some rogue AI to augment their old weaponry? This is huge.
Yeah. Militech and some secret weapon. Street's been saying it for ages. Usually between worlds ending on Tuesday and Bart Moss is hibernating in a fridge.
During the Unification War, the NUSA Colonel Kurt Hansen managed to take control of a portion of Night City's Pacifica district. After the war, Hansen defected from the NUSA and ignored his orders to leave the area, showing his disdain for the Arvin Accord, a ceasefire signed between the NUSA and Free States. He carved out his own private little paradise and became a sort of military tyrant. Controlled by Hansen's Barghest militia, the worst areas became a combat zone, was walled off from the rest of the city, and renamed from Serenisons to Dogtown. Thanks to his positioning directly above the Cynosure facilities, he was capable of getting his hands on the Neural Matrix, a device that utilizes the power of rogue AI for its benefactor. He eventually came into contact with an FIA agent by the name Songbird, who in exchange for betraying President Rosalind Myers would steal the Neural Matrix from Hansen, a device needed to cure her ailments from breaching the Black Wall, and thus sparked the entirety of the Phantom Liberty expansion. If you played, you know what happens in between, eventually ending with betraying or siding with Songbird. While siding with her helps Song get to the moon and cure her ailment, at least presumably, betraying her sends you into a chase that leads to the Cynosure facility, and an encounter with a rogue AI embodying a Cerberus frame. This location is the obvious core in which the majority of information I've been providing is uncovered. But there's one more questline that further expands upon Project Cynosure, titled Shot by Both Sides. A media by the name Bree Whitney stumbled across a story far more serious than the scream sheets she was used to writing. It was a corporate conspiracy, one with a lot of weight, and not surprisingly, she wanted to uncover it all. After all, corpo data like this earns you stacks of eddies. An archive conversation between her and an Adam Naoki reveals in exchange for the information found in the Cynosure sites, she would be provided cred and a ticket to a new life, courtesy of her employer, Netwatch. During this hunt, Bree Whitney hired V to help her break into Site D, which housed the obvious Cynosure data regarding weaponizing the Black Wall. After accessing the facility through the underground tunnels in Dogtown, the two are confronted by Dante Caruso, a Militech special agent who tracked V from Whitney's apartment. According to Dante, one of the original excavation agents, Caesar, had informed Bree of Site D, but was later assassinated by Netwatch to cover up anything related to Project Cynosure. The outcome can go one of two ways, with Dante or Bree's death. If Bree happens to survive this encounter, she sells all the data to Netwatch, who send an assassin named Carl Adamek to kill Lisa Smith and V. While successful in getting rid of Lisa, Carl doesn't have the same luck with V. On the other hand, if the data was never uncovered, the rest of Evan's team survives, allowing Militech to keep their project under wraps while securing the safety of its researchers. Not that they care too much. And that spells the end for all our information on Project Cynosure, until of course Mr. Hands or some other affiliation starts poking around and the cycle repeats. After all this information, what do you think made Militech abandon the research despite being so close to a revelation? I'd love to hear your opinion on the subject and any other thoughts down below. If you managed to learn something new and enjoyed, please leave a like and think about subscribing to my channel for all your cyberpunk needs. If you'd like to take the extra steps to support my channel, all the appropriate links will be down below. A huge thanks to all the channel members up on screen. I appreciate all of you chooms for the support, as it helps motivate me to make the content I love. It seriously means a lot more to me than I can say. And then another thanks to the Night City legends, Nick Schweiss, Paul Leach, and Zach Florence. And then another thanks to my solos, Dark Sister of Limbs, Obadiah Says Hi, Llama 404, Exio4, Johnny Silverwrench, and MickJacave 18. I spent quite a lot of time on this video, so I thought it would be nice to just personally shout out to you all. So as always, make sure to have a great week, and I will see you later, chooms.